Hello and welcome to Emma's ESL English. I really didn't know what to talk about. Today I really wasn't sure what should we talk about. So if you guys have any ideas or stuff that you want me to cover, things that are bothering you, whatever, drop me an email, write something in the comments, whatever you can, and give me some tips. What should I be talking about? I don't know. So because of that, some of you already know that I went to my grandma's house last week. I think it was in some of the videos. Not last week, actually the week before. And I got a lot of questions this week from students. A lot of questions about the garden. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the garden.
I can tell her this
listening practice.
through the joys of...
It's a special garden. There is nowhere else like it. That is true. And there is a reason for that. My grandfather was a farmer for his whole life. And when he retired, he decided to take an acre of land from the farm and turn it into their retirement home. He took this little corner. The rest of his land he gave to his two sons, my two uncles. So one is a pig farmer, one is a chicken farmer. But this little corner of land remained his. And they built a bungalow on there, which is still my grandmother's home. And he landscaped this plot of land. So it went from being a field to very much being a garden. There is a picture of my parents. I have not been able to find it. I don't know where it is. There is a picture of my parents when they first got together in the garden. You can't see anything. The twigs in the ground. That is as far as he had got at that point. So that's before I was born. That's 40 years ago. He was just planting it up. The house was just finishing off. They were just getting ready to move in 43 years ago. By the time I had grown to 8, 9, 10 years old, the garden was already at least 10 years established. It was big. It was a really big garden. He had a big pond, and there was a woodland behind the house. And yeah, it was a lot. There was a lot happening. There were a lot of flowers because my grandma really likes flowers. And he planted a lot of conifers with the hope that they would take up some space. I don't think he could ever have imagined how much space they would take up. He put piping down throughout the whole garden so that he would be able to turn on a tap and water the garden from anywhere in the garden. The only problem is we don't know where the plants are. At some point, he wrote some very detailed plans about what he wanted to do with the garden and how it be laid out and everything, and nobody can find the plans. So I know where some of the water pipes and taps are, but I don't know where they go to or how they go around the garden or anything like that. So there are some mysteries in the garden. And there are several really big memories that I have from being in the garden. When we were kids, both of my parents were working, and childcare was a lot less common in those days. So my parents would actually leave us at my grandma's house over several weeks during the summer holidays. So my brother and I were living there together with my grandma and grandpa over the summer holidays. My cousins live very, very close by. It's all within a quarter of a mile of each other. One of my uncles has 3 daughters. The other uncle has 2 daughters and 1 son. And at least 4 of them are very similar age to my brother and I. So we have people to hang out with, I guess. The biggest story is a near-death experience for my brother. When my brother was a kid, he was like magnetic for water. Any water anywhere nearby, he would fall into it, jump into it, wade through it. He was just attracted to water. And when he was very, very little, like 4 or 5 years old, he had this tractor, this little plastic tractor with the pedals like a bike, and this little trailer behind the tractor, and he had filled the trailer with sand. Don't ask me, he's a boy, he's doing whatever he does. And he was pedaling around the garden. Nobody was out there watching him. And obviously the weight of the sand drew him closer to the pond, which at that point was quite a dip in the garden to the pond. And my brother fell in. Of course he did. There was no way anybody could have heard him shouting. We were all in various different places. I vividly remember sitting in the living room with my mom and my grandma. They were both talking away and I was probably reading a book. And I didn't hear anything, but I remember my mom, she said David's in trouble, and she set off at a full tilt run right the way down the garden. And then she came to a grinding halt and froze and stood there staring at my brother paddling away in the garden, in the pond, getting more and more stuck with what we call duckweed. It's this kind of pondweed that can easily pull you under. When you're moving around, it wraps around your legs, so it can be quite dangerous. And she's just stuck. Obviously, her brain froze at seeing my brother and she didn't move. My dad, meanwhile, I don't even know where he was, but he came tearing in from another different part of the garden. He didn't even hesitate. Whew, like Superman, straight into the water. Pulled them both out of the water. And that evening I remember them in the bathtub together and this green chickweed, duckweed all over the bathroom, and they were in a lot of trouble for the amount of mess they made. But of course, everybody was pretty happy because nobody died that day. After that, my grandpa filled in half the pond, made it half the size, and redid some of the landscaping so it wasn't quite as dangerous. And the pond always had a cover, like a net cover on it after that as well. So we learned some lessons, but it's definitely the most dramatic story from the garden. And my brother used to make dens in the woods, so him and my cousin spent a lot of time in the woods building dens, cutting stuff down, breaking things, just causing chaos. But you know, the main thing for my grandma was just get them out of the house. So I would be sitting somewhere in a corner reading a book usually, and my brother would be out in the garden causing chaos. So that was good. The other really strong memory I have is of the butterflies. And I'm going to put some pictures of butterflies in the YouTube video, but I just can't capture for you what it was like when I was a kid. We didn't take any pictures, we didn't have a camera. You know, it's not like these days where everybody's got a camera on their hip. Yeah, my grandma had buddleias all over the garden, and butterflies really like those, and she still gets butterflies. But the number was astounding. You know, you could easily count 20, 30 butterflies on one buddleia at a time in the summer. And so many different varieties, sizes, colors. It was fantastic. You know, we could easily go out there for ages just looking for butterflies and see what we could find. I'm really sad that we didn't have pictures. I really wish I had evidence, you know, of how amazing that was. But of course, you can never imagine that the world will lose wildlife in the future. So for me, that's one of the saddest parts about going back to the garden, is that the state of our environment is clear because the variety of animals is considerably lower than it was when I was a child, which is very sad. The garden is now overgrown. Very, very overgrown. There are a lot of weeds right the way through the garden, and they're really strangling a lot of the plants. And the main reason for that is because there is no full-time gardener, and it's a big enough plot of land that it really needs a full-time gardener. Even if you have a gardener once a week, which my grandma's gardener is like once every month maybe, it's not enough to keep on top of things. And my grandma's 97, so she can't even really walk around the garden very much. She has a little bit by her front window, which has a lot of flowers in it, but that's, you know, she goes out and feeds the birds, and that's about as much as she can manage. I'll put a picture of me on the ride-on lawnmower going around the garden, and maybe you can get some idea of how drastically different it was when I was a kid compared to now. And I'll put a video of the rabbits so you can see the same place that I'm on the ride-on lawnmower is the same place where the rabbits are. So give you an idea of how drastically different the garden looks now. That lawnmower was the first time I'd driven anything, and my granddad was super proud of me that I was very happily whizzing around on the lawnmower making a big mess. I did not do a pretty job, for sure, but it was really good fun, and definitely began a lifelong addiction to driving. I still love driving now. I appreciate that I am very lucky to have had access to this fantastic garden that my granddad built all those years ago. I'm very sad that my niece is not going to have the same joy as I have had, because there's nobody taking care of it, sadly. But yeah, I'm a very, very lucky girl, and I appreciate that. And I hope you guys can all enjoy the gardens. And I would love to know, where is your favorite garden? Is it a park? Is it a family member's garden? Is it your garden? Where is your favorite green space? And why is it your favorite? What is it that's there? Is it the wildlife? Is it the flowers? Is it just a peaceful place? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear about it. If you have any questions, you can email me at emmaseslenglish@gmail.com. And like I said, any tips for what you want to hear, please get in touch. Or you can head over to the blog at www.emmaseslenglish.com and let me know in the comments below the post there as well. Thank you for tuning in. It was lovely to talk to you. I will chat with you next week. Have a great weekend. Bye.